Parents, grab your kids for this one. A new poll showing almost half of all workers over 50 are delaying their retirement plans, most of them citing financial concerns. And John, you say this is very bad news for their kids who are looking for work.
Absolutely. Look, we have structural high unemployment in the United States. We're not built for that. This is not cyclical. If it was cyclical, then lower rates could help the problem. It's not helping the problem. In fact, it's hurting the problem because seniors with low rates can't make very much off their retirement income. And so you have over 20% of seniors aged 65 and older that are staying in the workforce because they need the money. There's only a certain number of jobs out there. And I think I've mentioned this a couple times. We're the only developed country in the world with no national energy plan. We have no long-term plans. And because of that, there's no job creation event on the horizon.
You know, unemployment for younger kids for in their 20s is really, really high, Tracy. Do you think this is part of the problem, and will it get worse?
I think it will, unfortunately, if our kids don't take showers and stop swearing and things like that. Because if your choice is between a well-dressed elderly person who's responsible and shows up, or some kid that's going to come in smelling like God knows what he did the night before, the job's going to the elderly employee. And I think that's kind of where a lot of our kids are these days. We need a little work ethic back into the system.
Okay, Jonas, what do you make of this?
I don't think people working is bad for an economy. Okay, yeah, it's not ideal. You can't retire at 65 necessarily and just live off your Social Security and all your investments, because you're going to live a lot longer than you were going to live, 20, 30 years ago because of the healthcare system, which means you have to work longer. And by the way, if you're working, you're probably going to be spending more money than even if you had a pretty large portfolio. You working and spending money is good for the economy. Is it ideal for new workers with a high unemployment level to have people staying on the job longer? No, but for everybody, it's great. And I'll tell you, for employers who want to have skilled workers at a low wage for profits, it's really great.
But Gary B., the problem here is really why they're working longer. Many of them, because they have to. They can't retire. They lost a lot of money in the recession, and they're not making it up now.
Exactly, Brenda. Those young people that Tracy talked about, even without their showers and their poor work ethic, they'd be able to get jobs if the economy was growing like it did in the 90s. Unfortunately, you have home prices that inflation adjusted are back still at 1990 levels. You have a stock market inflation adjusted that's at 1998 levels. GDP is flat. Income is flat. This economy has done nothing. And we talked in the first segment about government overreach. As the government grows, the private sector and GDP slows down. That's what happened. People can't afford to retire. If I retired and I got out of my job, God bless, some kid could come in. I can't afford it. And I think probably everyone here, except for maybe David, the rich guy, is in the same boat.
All right, let's go to David.
Well, listen, I think that it's, people have to, as you alluded to, Brenda, they have to continue working because they lost value in their pensions with going through the recession and so forth. And there's nothing wrong with having productive, members of the American economy remaining productive. I think that what we need to do is to stimulate more growth, continue in the recovery from the recession. And with that, you have both younger workers getting more jobs and also those allowing themselves in retirement to continue to afford to retire.
Okay, John, I bet you have something to say about spending more money to stimulate the economy.
Look, that's what we're doing. We got to stimulate growth. And all we're doing is raising taxes, and we put a new tax in called Obamacare on small businesses. Look, we do need to stimulate growth. That would help everything. But we're doing everything opposite of what needs to be done as a government, what Gary's talking about, than what needs to be done to stimulate the exact same thing the thing that will create jobs in this country.
Yeah, and the other thing, too, part of the reason our elderly people are in the situation they're in is because of the government, because they had to pay for their kids to go to college and they dipped into their retirement funds to do it, because they had to pay for elderly family members. So they're the sandwich generation coming to roost now. They're paying for everything. Yep. There's nothing left. And to boot, they've probably been hit by the tech bubble bursting, the housing bubble bursting. I mean, these people got hit 6 ways till Tuesday. To spend more money and to tax them more, oh my God, kick them
Brenda,
while they're down.
Well, listen, I think, look, we've had 6 million, we've had 6.5 million jobs created in the last 3 years in the private sector. We've lost 730,000 public sector jobs. So it is not government that is looking to make up the difference. We need to continue to grow the economy in the private
And
sector.
we needed those
and we have been
700,000
seeing that,
jobs,
and
I'm
we've
sure.
have a lower unemployment rate.
Okay, I got to give the last
Lowest
word to
labor
John.
force participation rate since 1978. Jimmy Carter.
Okay, all right, that's the last word. Thanks, guys. That's right. Welcome back. After being closed for tours the past 224 days, the White House is reopening on November 5th. You'll recall the Obama administration said it didn't have the money because of those mandatory spending cuts. Now, those cuts are still in place. But now the White House says it has the money. Tracy, you say it had it the entire time.
Of course it did. It's called prioritizing. I mean, dear God, we all do it at home. You know what you have to pay it, get it done. Don't spend on the crap you don't need. Look, all they constantly do is stuff for media attention and to show the, poor little Johnny standing at the White House doors crying that he can't get his tour. It's all for publicity. It's nonsense. We could have taken care of this a long time ago.
And David, this was because of the sequester. The sequester is still on.
I think with the sequester, for a lot of Americans and everybody in general, that you have to do more with less. And that is exactly what they issued in their statement, was that despite the sequestered budgets, that they have learned in adjusting to the sequester to still be able to an extent return to having the tours at the White House. And it's an adjustment. It's not a matter of spending money that isn't there. It's a matter of getting the things done under less or smaller budgets.
Okay, Gary B., what do you think about that? The government under less and smaller budgets?
I listened very, very closely to what David said, and with all due respect, I didn't understand one darn word. Look, the White House was closed because they said it was a sequester. They could not differentiate one program or another. They were too stupid to do that. They're smart enough to have the NSA spy on everyone's emails, but they can't somehow prioritize. The sequester's still on, and somehow the White House is open. Something's fishy here. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure
Well, let me
it
make
out.
it plain to you,
Tracy
Gary.
said they're
doing it with
prioritizing.
less people and less money.
Why?
Okay.
And they're
Why
still
couldn't they do
doing
that
it with
before?
less money.
Why
Okay,
couldn't
you know
they
what?
do
I'm
that
sorry.
before?
I got to get everybody
Because
in.
they had to adjust.
Hold
That's
on.
what they had to do.
Hold on. Let's go to our rocket scientist. Okay, Jonas, what do you think?
To welcome back Cotter joke. The older people will get it. Look,
There goes our demographic.
Yellowstone and the White House is not what's bankrupting this country. And unfortunately, with this exercise in brief thrift that the government had to operate under, all the stuff that is bankrupt just kept going on. The checks all went out for Social Security, Medicare. It was all these little things that don't make any sense. And some of that's political. Sure, you're trying to show that you're suffering and you want to get your political way. Unfortunately, it's also because they don't know how to run a business. If Coke had to deal with 10% less revenues, they don't turn the power off at the plant where they bottle the soda. Maybe they'll cut back on the advertising. Well, the government's never going to make decisions rationally like that. They're going to you're just going to arbitrarily close things that are profitable. They'll lay off IRS workers who actually collect money for the government. So if you think you're going to get a sensible, sound cutback when they do it, you're not. And unfortunately, it's why shrinking the government's
let them run
I
healthcare.
got to give John the last word, John.
Look, Jonas talks about sensible in politics. We agree. The best tour that needs to happen is a tour of 535 members of Congress leaving D.C. and locking the door behind them. This idea of free pizza just doesn't work. It's a matter of prioritizing, just like Gary B. and Tracy say. It's very simple. Live within your means. They're still not doing that.
All right, last word. You'd pay for that tour. Okay, thanks, guys. And thanks to David for joining us. We appreciate it.
Pleasure to be with you.
Well,